love people, love God, and do stuff. And that's really what this series is about. I was talking to somebody this week, and they said to me, I felt like I had to do something bigger than my problems. There came to this place in my life that I felt like I had to do things that were bigger than my problems. Because we all have problems, and that's what I really believe the Love Does groups are all about, are doing things that are bigger than our own problems and believing and encouraging our schools. And so if you're not in a Love Does group, we would love to have you there. So last week, I went to Laguna Beach with my wife for a week, which was awesome just to get, you guys haven't been to Laguna Beach, it's pretty great. Went surfing for a couple days, but there was something that happened that I loved. When I was in the airport and when I was walking around, I would see people with Seahawks gear. Like a hat or like a Russell Wilson jersey. And there was this really great moment where I could like shout from across the room like, hey, Russell Wilson. And they were like, hey, Seahawks. And like it was this moment that we shared. If you guys like leave Seattle, it's really fun because you're like, hey, we won the Super Bowl. And like you get to share this moment. I was literally at the beach and I saw this guy and he had a hat on. And I was like, Seahawks. And he was like, yeah. And he was like all about it. And you know Seahawks fans because they're defined by like what they wear. Like I knew he was a Seahawks fan because he had the jersey. There's this moment in the Gospels that I love where Jesus, he's with his disciples. And it's right before he's going to go on the cross. And he says, hey guys, I got something new. And I imagine this moment that the disciples are like leaning in. He's like, hey guys, I got a new one. And they're all kind of like leaning in. And he's like, this is the new commandment. Love people. Love one another. And I imagine the disciples being like, yeah, we got that one. He's like, no. Love people. He says, this is how they will know that you love me. You ever wonder how you can show how you love God? You can say like, I love Jesus. But how do you show it? Like, how do you do it? It's through loving other people. You want to know how you show Jesus that you love him? You love other people. And some of us have had that moment in our life where we've seen this go the other way, right? We've seen people who said that they love Jesus and they said terrible things. Or you've seen people who were at youth group or at church but acted one way here and then another way somewhere else. You know if you love Jesus by how you love people. If you're taking notes tonight, our big idea is this. Your failures don't define you. Your failures don't define you. I love that idea of getting to go out and do stuff. It's as if God has this whole world that we get to be a part of, and love is like the building block. Has anybody ever been to a Lego store? Like there's stores like dedicated to Legos. Okay, I love Lego stores. There's one in like Bellevue. There's one at downtown Disney. But these Lego stores, they have one defining thing. And when you go in, there's all the normal Lego stuff. But in the back, there's like these crates of like colored Legos that are only the one piece. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like you'll go in and it's like the 4 block blue and it's like a bazillion of them. And it's like the things you keep candy in. Or it's like the skinny 6-piece, like tan, and there's like a bazillion of them, right? And they take up the whole back wall. And you go in and you can get these little cups and you like jam pack the cups and you can fit these pieces in there. My favorite part is to watch the kids, right? They come in and they're like past all the gizmos, all the gadgets, and they go straight for this wall. And they're like all in, right? They've got like the cup and they're like, no, I know exactly what I need. There's like the 6-year-old girl who got the package for the beach, but the beach only has 6 blue pieces and she needs 12 to build the ocean, right? And it only has like 3 palm trees and she's gonna need a couple more. And they're like all in on this wall, right? They get the cups, they fill it up. And my favorite part is that you can see in their eyes that they're like creating something, that they get to be a part of something. And I believe that's what Jesus is talking about when he talks about us loving each other. That we have these pieces that we get to build this world, but we build it by loving each other. That we get to be a part of this by creating and being a part of doing instead of just standing around. But sometimes we get in the rut of believing that we can't do it. Sometimes I think that our failures start to define us. Right? We get in this rut of believing, I don't think I can do things because of maybe what's happened to me or what somebody has done to me or the things I've done. We get in these ruts of guilt and shame. And this is the thing that I love about Love Does, is it erases all of that. It's like, no. All that guilt, all that shame, don't even think about it, because love does. There's this commandment in the Bible, and it's in there more than anything else. And it says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. It's actually in there 365 times, as if there's one for every day of the year. Do not be afraid. And I think a lot of times we get that. We're like, yeah, no, I know, I'm not afraid. But how often do we hide our weakness behind inflated courage, pretend courage? Right? Like, I do this. Like, I will hide my own weaknesses behind what I think is courage when it's actually not courage at all. Like, how many of you guys are just, like, cynical? Like, sometimes I'll just be, like, super cynical, and it's like this, like, I put on this armor to defend myself, but really, it's weakness. Right? And this is the thing that I love about Love Does, is that we actually get to take this away. My grandma has this swimming pool, and she lives in Southern California, and when they built this swimming pool, they, like, totally messed the whole thing up. It's probably the size of this stage. And it was supposed to be, like, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, and then like 8 feet deep. Well, the bulldozer got stuck, so it just kept going back and forth. This thing is like 19 feet deep, right? Like it's like 2 feet drop, right? There's like no in between. And as a kid learning to swim, it was like the most terrifying thing, right? Because you're standing there and you're like, this gets really deep really fast, right? You're like up to here, and then it's just like, shoosh, right? It goes straight down. And I remember learning to swim and standing on the edge of this pool and just looking in and being like, I don't want to do this, right? There's like no easing in. You're all in. My toes were on the side, and I was like, I don't want to get in that. That is really, really deep. But there's something about playing it safe that Jesus is like, no, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Life is too short not to be bold. Guys, I believe that life is too short not to be brave, and that Jesus is like, yeah, I want you out on the edge, but also all in. All in. It's actually better out there. And had I never got out of the shallow end, I would have never learned to swim, which would be kind of not that great if I was like 26 and loved to surf and couldn't swim. But it was because of that, because I took that step, I learned how to swim. And so our big idea, your failures don't define you. If I had to title tonight's talk, I title it this, Walk It Off. Walk it off. Pray with me. Jesus, tonight we give this to you. We know, Jesus, that our failures don't define us, God, that we are defined by your love. And can we wear your love like a jersey, like a badge, and can we know that you love us so much that we get to love others? In your name, Lord, amen. Bob Goff says this. He says, when you follow Jesus closely, you are going to trip, but you will bump into Jesus when you do. We all have failures. We all have stuff in our lives that we're just, like, not too proud of, right? We all have the things that, like, if people knew about you, you would be embarrassed. And I figured, like, if we're going to talk about failures, I should probably get up here and share one with you, right? Like, it would be only right as a leader to get up here. And so I had a job for a little while where I drove a really big, like, box truck, like probably the size of almost this room. And it was when I was in college, I would drive this box truck, and I drove it all through Seattle. And if you've ever driven in Seattle, it's like a lot of one-way roads, and there's a lot of traffic, and it's really hard. And there's this one time, in particular, I was dropping off at this, like, it was a downhill, and there was this huge, beautiful building, and they had this storefront and these kind of, like, glass awnings. And there was an alleyway by it where I was driving my truck, and I'm, like, pulling in, and I'm like looking in my mirrors, right, and I see the building on my right, and I see this guy, and he steps up, and he's like guiding me down this alleyway. And so I'm looking at my mirrors, and I'm driving, and he's kind of doing this one, like looking at my sides, and he's walking me back, and he's like, cool, keep coming, right, and I'm like halfway, and I'm driving, and then I just hear this like, and I like put the brakes on, and I look at him, like hoping, and he's just like, and like, I kid you not, this is probably, I had this moment of like, run. Like, never return. Like, never come back to this place. Like, quit everything, go off into the woods, and live there forever. Luckily, I was like, all right, I gotta get out of this truck. And I got out, and he was just like, it was one of those where people were just frozen. Like, he didn't even talk to me. He was just like, my truck was through the glass into, like, the room of the store. Like, my truck was inside of a store. Like, not like, oh, you dented the side. Like, there's customers who are like, your wheels are on my foot. Like, I was through. Like, there was no turning back. I was far and beyond. And again, I walk in, I had this thought, like, run. Never return to this place. Change your name. And, like, I remember I got so sweaty so fast. I was so scared. I was like, oh, my goodness, somebody's going to murder me. And I remember, like, it was one of those where it was so bad that everyone was just quiet. Like, the owner came out, and he was just like, how did you mess that up? And I was like, he was pointing me. And your voice goes high when you're really scared. You're like, hey, it was him, right? And like, I remember like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what do I do? Like, sorry? Like, what are you gonna clean? Oh, am I gonna broom out and start like sweeping? Like, there's nothing I can do. And there's these moments in life that just crash. And maybe you guys have been there where it's just this all falls down moment. And you're like, I just want to run. And some of them are kind of funny, and some of them are kind of serious. Maybe you've been there where you had a family member pass away, or a friend pass away, or your parents split up, or I don't know what it is for you, but there's these all falls down moments where you're standing there and you're like, I just want to be anywhere but here. I just want to run. And those moments where it's your fault. You know, I did this. This is my failure. And maybe it's just this crashing moment in your life where you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. This failure is on me. And there's this guy in the Bible named Peter. And tonight what I want to do is I want to walk through 4 stories of Peter, because I believe that Peter shows us our own humanity and what it's like to fail. And so the first lesson we learn is this. It's our point number 1, if you're taking notes. It's more important to follow than not to fail. It's more important to follow than not to fail. Jesus says in the Gospels, follow me. Follow me, 2 words. And it's funny because Jesus, when he meets his disciples, he isn't like, hey, here's a quick exam. Or, hey, we're just going to do this physical real fast, and then I'll see if you can come with me. Or he's not like, hey, what's kind of your religious views? He's like, follow me. Those 2 words are actually incredibly scary, because the next question you have is where. If I come up to you and I was like, follow me, you're going to be like, what time? Where are we going, right? Jesus just says, follow me, period. That's it. Follow me. And so his disciples, they begin just following him and learning from him. And there's this disciple, Peter, and he says, Peter, follow me. Leave your nets behind. Peter's a fisherman. He says, leave your nets behind. I'm gonna teach you how to fish for people. I'm going to teach you what this kingdom is like. And there's this moment in the gospel where Peter's in this boat, and all the disciples are huddled up there, and this storm comes up. And the waves are huge, and Jesus walks by, and he's just walking on the water, which is rad. And it's kind of the story that everybody knows. But I love to point out what Peter does. This is Matthew 14, 24. And it says, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Do not be afraid, he said. Take courage, I am here. Then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come walking on the water. Yes, come, Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus. Why did you doubt me? When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. You really are the Son of God, they explained. I love this moment with Peter, because it just seems kind of crazy that you would be in the boat, Jesus would walk by, and instead of being like, hey, you're on the water, Peter's like, can I get out there too? Peter's like, oh, I'd love to do that. How do we get this going, right? I love Peter. He kind of reminds me of just like the friend that you have that's just down for anything, right? Peter's like, oh, we're walking on water? Sweet, can I do this? And Jesus like, yeah, come out of the boat, come out of the boat. And maybe some of you guys have been there in your life where you feel like, you know what? I have this feeling, and I feel like God is here, and then it was gone. Maybe you went to a camp or you had an experience where you're like, I really feel like God is close, and then you don't feel like God is there anymore. And Peter, he fails. He starts to sink. He starts to slip down, and Jesus rescues him. He says, you have little faith. It's this failure in Peter's life, but what we'll see is this failure does not define him. Because here's the thing. We will fail. There will be moments in our life that we will fail, but we are not failures. We are not defined by our failure. Our second point is this. Fail doing something that you love. fail doing something that you love. This is our second point, but man, this one's probably one of my favorites just because I love what I get to do. Chase is up here playing, and we were worshiping, and I was like, man, I love my job. I love my job. I heard this story recently of this woman. She's a stewardess, and this guy was on this plane, and the guy next to him was just being rude, and they were 10 minutes late, and he was like yelling at her. And so when he left, this guy was like, hey, do you like your job? Do you like working as a stewardess? And she said this, and I thought this was interesting. She said, when I'm on the ground and I see a plane overhead, I say, wow, I get to do this. I've been in this industry for 25 years, and I look at a plane overhead, and I'm like, wow, I get to do this. And isn't that the hope for our life? That we'll have something, we'll do something, that we'll have so much purpose, they'll be like, wow, I get to do this. I get to be a part of this. Fail at doing something you love. I love it because, like, without Jesus, I'm not good at my job. I'm not good at a husband. But with Jesus, he makes my failures into championships. He takes me into something so much more I could ever be. In John 20, there's this moment where Jesus has risen again. And John, one of the disciples, he calls himself the disciple Jesus loved. Him and Peter are running to see the empty tomb. They're running to see the risen Christ. And I love this especially because John, the writer of this book, he throws in that he beat Peter to the tomb. Like this moment of like, yeah, but also I won. So that was kind of sweet. Like, oh yeah, Christ rose from the dead, but also I outran Peter. So that was sweet. And he just throws that in as a side comment. But they're running to the tomb. And here's what I especially love about this story. It's just 3 days later, Peter has denied Christ. Jesus says to Peter, you know what, Peter? You will deny me 3 times. Peter has denied his Savior, his friend, and he still runs to Jesus. Do you know that God is the kind of person that you get to run to? That our God isn't somebody that when you fail, you have to shy away, but you actually get to run to. There's moments in your life when you have doubt and you feel like you're not good enough, and instead of backing away, you actually get to run towards him. And like Peter, you get to run as fast as you can, because I honestly believe that Peter was running those failures off. But he was like, you know what? These failures don't define me anymore. Jesus, that risen Jesus, the one who just exited that tomb and beat death, that's who defines me. The author and perfecter of my faith, I will keep my eyes on him. And Peter's not even thinking about his failures. He's not thinking about the time he fell into the water with doubt. He's not thinking about the time he denied Christ. He's like, no, Jesus, that's all I got. That is all I got. I will still follow you. And I believe that Peter was running off his failures. I watched this video on YouTube like a month ago, and it was this dad teaching his son how to walk. It was his dad teaching his son how to walk, and his son was probably like 2 years old. And he was standing there, and his son's trying to do it. And like, I don't know if you've ever seen a baby try to walk, but it's like all stanky leg and no movement. It's like couch, like, and you're like, you got it. And he's standing there, but he's looking at his son in the eyes, and he's like, you got it. You got it. And the kid's standing right there on the couch, and he's looking at his dad, and his dad just keeps saying, you got it. You got it. I know you got it. And he lets go of the couch. And there's that moment in our faith where we have to let go of the couch, right? We have to get off the edge. We actually have to get into the deep end. And he lets go of the couch. He looks straight in his dad in the eyes, and he begins to walk. And his dad is going crazy. His dad's cheering. He's saying, you got it. You got it. You got it. And then his son falls down. His son falls down, and we've been there. It's that all falls down moment where we're like, you know what? I messed up. I failed. What does his dad do? His dad just scoops him up in his little jammies and puts him right back onto the couch and says, you got it. And maybe that's what you need to hear tonight, is that your God is looking at you saying, you got it. You got it. Just keep walking towards me. Keep following me. And the moment where this little guy got across that carpeted room to his dad scooped him up and threw him up in the air and caught him and said, you got it. Those are the moments. Our failures do not define us. Bob Goff says in his book, I used to be afraid of failing. Now I'm afraid of succeeding at the wrong things. I used to be afraid of failing, and now I'm afraid of succeeding at the wrong things. The tomb was empty, and Peter said, no, I've got to get to Jesus. Our third point is this: failure isn't final. Failure isn't final. Babe Ruth said this, it's really hard to beat someone that just won't give up. Man, I want to be the kind of person they say that Bryan will not give up. He will not give up. I don't know if you've ever seen this, like Abraham Lincoln has a whole list of failures. Michael Jordan didn't make the junior high basketball team. Your failures do not define you. Your failures do not define you. And Peter, he's gone from falling in the water to denying Jesus, to running to Jesus. But then there's this moment. There's this moment in the gospel, and it's one of my favorite stories. It's at the end of John. And Peter, Jesus has risen. He's seen him a couple times, but he doesn't know what else to do, so he goes back to fishing. And maybe you've been there in your life where you felt like you had this moment with God, but you didn't know what to do, so you just went back to all you knew. All you knew. And Peter, he's fishing. And what does Jesus do? Jesus is on the beach, and he makes Peter and the disciples breakfast. He makes them breakfast, and Peter sees Jesus from in the boat on the shore, and he gets out of the boat, and he runs. But it's deep, so it must have not been a total run, so it's a run-swim, and he goes all the way towards Jesus. I believe that Peter was running off his failures. Because there's those moments in life where you fall down, and you just got to walk it off. You just got to walk it off. And I want to call the band back up. Our fourth point is this. Failure is a chance to let Jesus define you. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight, and the band is going to play a couple songs, but during the first song, I want to do this. There's going to be Sharpies at the end of each row, and we're going to pass them down, and as they come down, go quick and pass it to the person next to you. But I want to do this. There's like those one or two failures that you just can't shake. There's like those things, the shame or guilt in your life that you carry around like a backpack. And you feel like no matter how hard you try, it just won't leave you. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to think of 1 or 2, 3, maybe 4 things that the failures in your life where you're like, this won't leave me. I can't seem to forget this. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to take your shoe off and write it in the bottom. I want you to take your shoe off and write it on the bottom. I took my shoe and I wrote, not being good enough. That is a failure in my life that I feel like will not shake me, not being good enough. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to write them on the bottom of our shoe because here's what will happen. Here's what will happen. After the rest of your week from walking, from running, you will wear that failure off of the sole of your shoe. The same way Jesus did. The same way Jesus did when he ran to Jesus. Every time you're walking in your school, every time you're walking at home, you're going to think, you know what, those failures don't define me. That thing in my life, it does not define me anymore. The only thing that defines me is Jesus. Jesus is the only thing that defines me. Next week, when you're back here at youth, you won't have any failures on the bottom of your feet. You will be free. You will be free from whatever it is that holds you down. So tonight, what we're going to do, as we have these Sharpies come by, I want you to reflect. I want this to be a holy moment where Jesus is here, he is with us, and we take those failures and we pen them on the soles of our shoes and we say, you do not define me anymore. Jesus defines me. Peter, running to Christ at the empty tomb. Peter, running to Jesus on the beach. Your God is there. He is for you. And even if you feel like you have been lost, that you have been away, God is here. He is present, and he loves you so much. He's crazy about each and every one of you. And if you've never had the chance to let this God into your life, to say, Jesus, you know what, those 2 words, I want to follow you wherever you take me. Wherever we go, I want to be there with you. I no longer want to be defined by the failures in my life. I want those off of me, and I want them gone. I'm going to say a prayer, and I just want to include you in this tonight. I want to include you because we get to be a part of a God that loves us and is for us and says those failures, they're not defining you anymore. Pray with me. Jesus, we know that you are good, God. We know that you are for us. We know that you sent your one and only Son here to die on the cross so our sins will not define us anymore. Jesus, the failures in our life, the places that we feel like we have totally failed, the places where we hold guilt, the hurt we have of things that people have done to us and we've done to others, God, will you take those away from us tonight? Can we give those to you? Father, we know that you are good. Jesus, I just pray for the people in this room that have never had a chance to have a relationship with you. Tonight, will hearts be open? Will you come into our life? Will you fill us with your Spirit? God, can we worship you knowing that you are for us? Jesus, we thank you so much. In your name, Lord, amen.